Buddy, hello, hello. Happy today's Tuesday. Welcome to our live stream. So, my name is Chris on Code. If at any time you have any questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat. I'm happy to answer those. We'll wait a few seconds, just make sure everybody's jumping in. I've got my black coffee here. All right, so let's get started. Today, we will be doing a little bit of a talk on consuming an API. And I want to add to that also from consuming an API to also creating an API. So to give you a little rundown, my name is Chris on Code. I serve the developer community, which is you here at DigitalOcean. I am a developer advocate here. And we're so excited to connect with you on these live streams. I think these are a really fun format to connect and chat with you all live and a little bit less, more impromptu, which is a lot more fun in my opinion. So in the coming week, so this week I have a webinar on Thursday, and we'll be talking about creating a custom API, and we'll do that. I'll do a little teaser here for that, and then in 2 weeks uh, we'll be consuming that custom API with React, and there's some tips on consuming APIs in React. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, so we'll talk about some options here in today's stream. We've got a lot of videos on stuff like this all over the DigitalOcean channel. So please feel free to check out our YouTube channel and let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So here's my screen and cool. So what we have here is digitalocean.com. The first part of this stream, I want to talk about creating a custom API. So if you're creating a custom API, a lot of times you'll be building out your own backend. Maybe you want to use Ruby on Rails. Maybe you want to use Laravel. Maybe you want to build out a Node API and use a framework like Adonis. In this scenario, I want to talk about a different option called Strappy, which is a headless CMS that you host yourself. And I want to show you why Strappy is really cool. I'm kind of liking it a lot lately. So here we are at DigitalOcean. We have a Strappy, what we call a one click on our marketplace. So you can go ahead and install this really quickly using this one click button, which is convenient. So here, let's talk about Strappy a little bit. There's their menu. So it's designing APIs fast, and we can manage our content easily with Strappy. Um, let's get past all the marketing stuff. Let's show you the Strappy dashboard. So this is pretty much what we'll be doing in Thursday's webinar. We'll leave a link to that in the comments below or in the description below. So what's really cool is I've built out a post type right here. And let me zoom in for you all. That may be too much. Okay. So here we are. We have a post type. Let's add a new post. Let's call it my new blog post. See how it autofills for me. Let's throw in some content. Here is some really compelling content. And if we hit save here, now we have a new blog post. So this is really cool because it gives us our own CMS right out of the box. We don't have to like build out our own dashboard or anything like that, which is something that I've done in the past. And building a WYSIWYG editor like this, talking from experience, is not the most fun thing to do. So here we go. We have our post type. What's really cool about Strappy is that let's go to content types builder. We can create a new collection type. Let's call this dogs. So dog is our type. We can add in all the different types of fields that we need, which is really cool. And we'll be doing a lot more of this in depth in Thursday's webinar. But real quick, I want to show you adding a text field for name for the dog. We'll add another field for, let's say, a number for the age of said dog. We'll keep that as an integer. We'll hit finish. We'll hit save and we'll restart this whole thing. And now we have content type for dogs and posts. So which is really cool. Let's create a new dog. My dog's name is Bella. She is 13 years old. I'll hit save. And from here, you might be wondering, okay, why is Strappy so cool? The cool thing about Strappy is that if we go to roles and permissions here, I'm gonna set all of our dogs to be public. And if we go down here, I have posts. I've set that to public access. If we go down here to dogs, I'll say you can find any, and you can find one single dog. I'll hit save. All right, so I know that was a little quick. We'll go a lot more in depth on that stuff in the Thursday webinar. So here, if we go to our API, we automatically get an API built out for us by Strappy immediately just from creating content. And Strappy gives us this out of the box. So the reason I like Strappy is I've built a lot of APIs. This is the fastest way to do it, in my opinion, is to find a headless CMS that you like, host it on DigitalOcean, and then just get your API up and running. So here we go. We have our API for posts. And if I just do /dogs right here, right, we get our one object for the dog that we created. So in really quickly, you can create an API. And there's a lot of stuff you can do with Strappy. We'll do a lot more of that on Thursday, as I keep saying. But we'll be doing relationships. We'll be doing more advanced API type stuff. But another really cool thing about Strappy is if we go to our dashboard, let's zoom out. We'll go to our marketplace down here, and there's a GraphQL plugin we can click install, and automatically we get go into our playground. So if you do /GraphQL, you get a GraphQL API out of the box. Well, not out of the box. You have to click one thing, but we have our API right here. We can do posts, title, content. You hit play, and now we get all of our data back from our GraphQL API. 2 seconds here. Yes, Alfonso. Strappy is like a backend as a service. So I guess their technical term for it is a headless CMS, but essentially they are a backend as a service. They give you the dashboard, they give you the APIs, and they give you all that stuff out of the box. So if you're doing this on your own, you would have to do the database migrations, the database schema. You would have to do the connections to the database. You would have to pretty much do the whole MVC, or at least the model and the controller part of things, where you create your backend, you go grab data from the backend, and then you spit it out through an API. And a lot of that stuff, all of that stuff, is done for us already. So that is the first webinar that I'll be hosting, is the backend side of things. That'll be this Thursday, and definitely check the link on that, because that's actually a lot of fun. And I mean, this whole thing has been fun so far. The next part of it, which is the webinar that we'll be doing in 2 weeks from now, is going to be on consuming this custom API with React. So we've done the backend side of things. Let's move to the front end side of things. We have our REST API here. Let's go over to our editor. And here, let me zoom in a little further. We'll be talking about React and the different ways that you can grab data in React. There are a lot of ways. So I want to propose 3 options right now, and then we will go into more in depth in them in that second webinar about React. But let's say option number 1. Option 1 is going to be get data in a component. And this is probably the first option that you reach for when you're doing React grabbing data. So here, let's say I have a JavaScript fetch, right? And we want to go pull from our API. You would probably just do fetch. And in this case, we're running everything locally. So 1337 slash dogs, right? And then you do a dot then, res.json, and then you do a dot then, and then you would have dogs, or at least data in this case, and then do something with the data. So that would be a scenario, option 1, for getting data. But if you want to do this when your component gets mounted in React, we have lifecycle methods that we can do called use effect. We can say, hey, run all of this when our app starts. And that's a way to run everything when our app starts, is to do a use effect. But that's option number one. You get data directly in the component. But now we are starting to, let's say our app starts to get a little bigger. Once we get to a bigger app, then we start having child components. Like let's say we had a component for dogs right here, and we want to pass in any of the dogs that we get here. We would pass in like dogs is equal to dogs, or I guess you could call that doggos if you want. So that's kind of option number one, directly in the component. It doesn't really scale well when you start getting a larger React application. So before we move on to option number two, I know I've been talking a lot. Option number three, let's go to questions. Does anyone, okay, so free open source with plugin. Yes, so Strappy, if we go back to the Strappy side of things, I'm assuming, Kalpesh, are you talking about the GraphQL plugin? So if we go over here, Strappy is open source. And the cool thing is you can host this wherever you want yourself. We make it easy at DigitalOcean with our one click, but if you wanted, you could host it wherever you want. And yes, open source, so all of the code you can see in your repo. And also the GraphQL plugin is a free add-on for Strappy. All right, so question from chat, new to Strappy, can I build a complete site with Strappy front end and back end? The answer to that is you can build half of a site. Well, I guess 2/3 of a site with Strappy. It is completely just your back end and the API. So you would have to bring your own front end to go grab data from this API that Strappy gives us. So in my scenario, being a JavaScript developer, I would probably build out a Strappy dashboard, a Strappy CMS, get all my content into Strappy, and then I would use a tool like Gatsby to kind of pull from this API and generate a website. So if you're coming from a CMS like WordPress, where it does the dashboard, the data, and the view for you, you can think of this as just the dashboard side of things, and then you bring in your own front end, which is really fun. All right. Any more questions? I like this. I'm seeing a lot of Strappy questions, which is fun. But yeah, absolutely love Strappy. Definitely wish I had Strappy back when I had to build out a couple different websites. But so we have get data in a component. That's option number one. And yeah, if you have questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll answer those. But moving on, let me grab some coffee. All right. So moving on, option number two, we have usually you don't want to grab data directly in this component. It starts to get a little bit brittle because you are bringing in multiple components, multiple data sources. And option number two, get data at a higher level, and then you pass it down to your other components. So in this scenario, I want to talk about React context, and you could switch this out for React Redux. So here you would you would say like, let me remember my syntax, const dog context is equal to create context right here. And then you would create a dog provider right here, dog provider. And then you would wrap everything down here with a dog provider. And I know I'm speeding through and not writing a lot of this code. That's what our longer webinar is for, is to kind of dig into the real code. But here we have a dog provider. And then now, instead of doing this inside of our components, you can move this out into this dog provider. And now, whenever you need something, you'd say const dogs is equal to use dogs. And you could create a custom React hook, which we will do in that future webinar. So use dogs right here is just, we're basically moving all that data and logic into a higher level so that our app component is a lot cleaner and our child components are a lot cleaner, which is really cool. Any questions about that one? Any more Strappy questions? I feel like there's a lot of Strappy love going around. All right. Well, moving on to option number three, which is kind of the newest person on the block, is using what are called Apollo hooks. So Apollo is a company and a tool that uses custom React hooks to grab data from GraphQL. This is specifically a GraphQL thing. So if we wanted to go grab data from GraphQL, which a lot of the front end ecosystem is moving towards these days, we would change this out to be something that looks like this. We would say const loading, error, and data is equal to use query. And this is something that the Apollo hooks give us, is this use query custom hook. And now you can say, hey, if there's an error, return this div, say something broke. I can't say broke. I was trying to say borked, borked, broked. I don't know anymore. And then let's say if loading, we could say return loading. And then if data, this will run, and then we can actually show our component. So this is another way to get data in React. You can definitely move this up to a higher level as we did for React Context in option 2. But overall, I think these three options are pretty much what you'll see mostly in uh, React applications when you're grabbing data. So this is the thing that we're going to talk about at in length in the second webinar. So yeah, if you're interested in either of those things, for creating an API with Strappy, that's this Thursday, or consuming an API with React, which is in 2 weeks, definitely check out the links below. And yeah, if you have any more questions, let me know. Anything you'd like to see in those webinars, any questions you have about this live stream right now, let me know, and we'll answer those for you. Cool. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this live stream. If you do have questions, please throw them in the comments and we'll be sure to answer them there. If you are interested in Strappy or in consuming an API with React, definitely look at the webinar links below. And I will see you in both of those this week and in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.